Welcome to the Handcrafted Podcast, the business of making things. I'm Paul, founder of Philadelphia Table Company and the Handcrafted Network, and I believe great craftsmanship deserves great business strategy. This podcast is for makers who want to build not just great products, but a thriving business. Each episode will dive into the mindset, systems, and skills that turn craft into success. All right, guys, welcome back to the Handcrafted Podcast. Handcrafted Podcast is brought to you by the Handcrafted Network. Handcrafted Network is an online community of makers, and it's a classroom where you can learn and gain the tools necessary to grow your business. I think being a part of a group is super helpful, being able to ask questions, learn from others, as well as see what's sort of working, what's not working. It just kind of gives you the tools needed to make sure you're not making those big mistakes. There's a bunch of online classroom stuff, modules that I've created, everything from marketing to advertising to writing invoices and sales, as well as this topic that I'm going to be talking about today. So the topic I'm going to talk about today seems to be like something a lot of people have been really interested in, intrigued by. I get a lot of questions about. We talk about it a lot in the group. I just wrapped a group call for our scaling group. We talked about it a little bit there. So I want to talk about it here. And that topic is interior designers. Now, sidebar, I am not an interior designer. So the information that I am sharing is information that I've learned from working with interior designers, as well as the knowledge I've gained from listening to other interior design podcasts and consuming information that interior designers also consume, books, whatever. So with that said, I want to talk to you about my experience with interior designers and a great way for you to utilize them and work with them in a way. If you are an interior designer and you are listening to this, feel free to call me out on my crap. Let me know if what I'm saying is completely wrong. I will gladly welcome you to be on the podcast as well if you're able to provide the community with some great knowledge and insights. So, working with the interior designers is a really great place to grow your sort of maker business, whatever the business is. So for me as a furniture maker, working with interior designers has been really helpful in growing and scaling the business. And I'll tell you why. And I have a love-hate relationship with interior designers. And if you're an interior designer listening to this, hopefully you don't fall into the hate part of the conversation. The things I love about working with interior designers is it can be recurring income. It could be recurring work. They tend to reach out if you do a really great job with the interior designer. They tend to reach out with other projects. When you're selling individual projects to individual homeowners, what ends up happening is it's just kind of like one piece here. You might hear from them a few years down the road. You might hear from them a little bit further down the road. But in general, it's not really like a repeat business because what you're doing is usually selling something kind of expensive or kind of something that you're buying. If it's something that's handmade, usually it's something that people are buying once. So we sell dining tables. How many dining tables do people buy in their lifetime? Usually average probably 3, 4 max maybe. So we don't see people super often. Interior designers will come back to us time and time again to work with us, to provide us with POs and to connect us with their clients and all that sort of stuff. So from that aspect, I absolutely love it. It's amazing. It's inside sales. It's a matter of making sure you have great relationships with these interior designers, have a great working relationship as far as like making sure you're communicating properly, all of that sort of stuff. So that part of it's really great. Often, if you find the right ones, have really great budgets. So think about the top 1%, the very wealthy people who are affording or purchasing handcrafted goods. Handcrafted goods are expensive. We talk about this many times in the podcast, the luxury strategy and how you actually need to be raising your prices. And so interior design, if you're in that 1%, if you're even in maybe the top 5% of income household earners, you're not going to design the house yourself. You're going to hire someone. You're going to hire a designer. You're going to hire interior decorator. You're going to hire somebody to help you with this choice. So the interior designers are often a path to get into these higher ticket homes, get into these higher ticket clients, and get into these places where you can sell things that are like genuinely really nice and really well stylized. Another positive is interior designers very often will photograph the space, so you'll get some nice professional photos. They're also going to work with you to create pieces that are, I don't want to say trending, but are like maybe more popular, that are maybe more design forward. So I really embrace that because they're usually dialed into the things that homeowners want and that people want, kind of like moving forward. They're kind of forward thinking and they're creating an artistic piece. And like each individual home is going to have some cool ideas. Those are all things I love about interior designers. There are some things that I really don't like about interior designers as well. Sometimes interior designers like to play what I call goalkeeper. So what they'll do is they'll keep you from the client. I understand that they're hired to be the liaison between the maker or between the company and the client. What gets really challenging is conveying what our value is, what our project is, how we do things to the end user. To me, that's really important. And what ends up happening sometimes is you get like a little game of telephone, and often it's hard to get the interior designer to sell something that is a little bit higher ticket, maybe higher value, something that I'm really great at selling. I could sell that to the client, but the interior designer may not. There's all sorts of subtleties of things that I like to virtue signal and talk about that they may not be willing to talk about. The other part of it too is sometimes interior designers are working with whole home budgets. So they may have a whole line item of things, kitchen cabinets, sofas, all these other things that they're working with. And our piece is going to be one piece in a long line item. And they might go through and say, okay, custom dining table, $15,000. Why do I want that? Get rid of it. When I didn't even have the opportunity to explain why that table should be worth that amount of money. So that's sort of like the dark side of the interior designers. The other side of it too is them getting a little bit pushy with design and color and not knowing. There's a lot of uneducated interior designers out there. If you're an interior designer listening to this, please educate yourself on the materials, the proper materials, how the materials can be used best. I will gladly help you, talk you through that. We host interior designers at our shop, which has been amazing because I get to show them, talk to them, educate them on what we do. I know what we do is very different. So some interior designers, I call them the dolly decorators, if you will. Those are the ones that don't sort of know that the difference between a walnut and a white oak or something, and will want you to stain match a chair that they found on Wayfair or something. So those are kind of like the low grade, lower tier interior designers that are sort of a pain to work with. Sometimes you'll end up going through thousands, or not thousands, but maybe like 10 revisions on design, 10 revisions with stain colors and all that sort of stuff. So what you really want to do ideally is find interior designers who understand who you are, what you're able to offer, and be able to sell what it is that you are offering. So with that said, positives, negatives, just putting it out there. When I first started with interior design, I'll talk to you too about sort of the two business models as well, and how to like real world, practical, how to do it and how to work with them, all that stuff. When I first started out, I got very fortunate in the fact that I started reaching out and connecting to interior designers early. So there were a number of interior designers that I've kind of grown with as a company. So we continued to grow. They also continued to grow. So it's a great place if you're an early maker, if you're even just somebody who's doing it part-time. It's great to try to find some interior designers that are also sort of in the same position, interior designers that are maybe just getting started, interior designers that are like on their way up, or like people that are part-time, because what happens is as they grow, you will grow with them, and they're going to continue to bring you work throughout the duration of your business. We have a number of interior designers that come to us time and time again with pretty consistent work that feeds into our top line. So when you are just starting out, it's really helpful to connect with them. And the way that they connected with us is most of the time they sort of reached out to us. They heard about us through some sort of community or some sort of networking something. And I always talk about this. We were talking about this on the group today, that it's really, or yesterday actually, we had a different group call yesterday. One of the things that's really helpful, I think, is like being part of things that are like networking, regardless of what it is. So whether that be a church or a jujitsu gym or CrossFit gym or running club, book club, kids soccer practice, any one of those things is a great place for you to meet and connect with people and to start to develop your network. Your network is everything in this. Your network is how you're going to connect with people, is how people are going to find you. So what you want to do is, most of us have some sort of interior designer somewhere within our network, or we can find someone that way. So what started happening for us was we started getting connected with a few, and they started posting on their socials about us, sharing about us. And if you're a great vendor for them, you're a great person to work with, what they're going to do is share it with their friends. They're going to share it with other interior designers. And what's going to happen is you're going to start to get known as somebody who can produce whatever it is. If you're doing custom built-ins or cabinets, or sourcing fabrics for them, and it's a heavy referral base. They're always being like, hey, who do you know does fabric? Who do you know does leather or brass or whatever? And if you are that go-to person, you're going to end up continually getting recommendations and resources. This is a great way to grow your business without advertising, and sort of working on what I like to call inside sales. Another great way to meet with these interior designers is to find them. So I used social media, or you can do a simple Google search. You could just say interior designers near me. What I like to do is try to find sort of like the lower tier, like newer interior designers. And what I used to do is reach out to them, find a contact email, and say, hey, I'm going to be in your area on Wednesday. I'd love to stop by and tell you what we do. We're a custom furniture company. I'd love to bring you some samples, as well as introduce you to the company. And sometimes you'll get no's, sometimes you get yeses, sometimes you get no responses. But it's a really great place to start as far as networking and trying to get these people to meet with these people and to learn who they are. If you have a really great shop, if you have a big shop, I love to invite them to our shop, because I think that that's where sort of the magic happens. They're not able to go to an Our House shop or a Crate and Barrel shop or any one of these other places. So you're able to offer a unique experience. And all of these designers absolutely love that. They're artists in their own right as well. So they want to connect with artists, and they get really excited about connecting with other artists and learning about the process, and learning about where it's made, who it's made by. All of that sort of stuff is super important to them. So it's a really, really great way to get your foot in the door with them. Now, the other thing to remember when you start working with interior designers, from what I've come to understand, is there seems to be about two business models. The first business model is the flat fee business model, where they get paid a flat fee to design or decorate a house, whatever, $150,000. And then what they do is they source the different furniture pieces, and often pass that direct price on to the client. Or what they'll do is they'll source the pieces, and then they have like a finder's fee, 5%, 6%, whatever, that they then pass on to the client. I've noticed, from my perspective, these tend to be the better interior designers, the ones that are more worth working with, the ones that actually know the different materials, the ones that bring you really great projects, the ones that are kind of a little less of a pain. The secondary ones are the ones that collect commission from everything they sell. So those are the ones that are usually asking you for sort of net pricing. And net pricing is just an inside interior design sort of pricing. So it's like, for anybody in the industry, you can ask for quote unquote net pricing. Since all of our stuff is custom, everything is net pricing. There's no retail pricing. So net would normally be like, if you're a big box store, net is maybe going to be like 40% off, and then the retail price is like 40% more. So if you go to purchase directly from Crate and Barrel, it's going to be $1,000. If you purchase through an interior designer, it may end up being less, because it's like a net price. For us, we do everything as net pricing, and then the interior designer can mark that price up. So often the second type of interior designer, what they do is they get the deals. They're incentivized by how deep of a deal and how deep of a discount they get from a big box retailer. I don't like working with interior designers like this that often, because most of the time they're incentivized to sell lower priced items, lesser quality goods, because the big companies like Our House and Crate and Barrel and Restoration Hardware have the margin that they can reduce and give them sort of designer prices. So when you start working with an interior designer, they're going to ask, what is your net pricing? What is your and then what's your suggested retail? So when we do everything custom, what I like to say is, hey, our prices are net pricing. Some interior designers will mark up as much as they want. As long as I'm getting my price, it doesn't matter to me how much you mark it up. Some are going up 20%, some are doubling it. And for me, it really depends. And I just say for me, it depends on, as long as we're getting our money, it doesn't necessarily matter beyond that. Where it gets a little sticky is when you have, say, an online sort of store and you have stuff that's priced. So if you have something that's priced at, say, $5,000 and they say, hey, what's the net price for that $5,000 product? They're expecting it to be less than $5,000 so that they can then sell it, because they can't purchase it from you for 5,000 and then sell it to a client for 7, and then the client comes back to see your website and they see that it's there for 5, because that's not going to work. So finding the interior designers that do either flat fee or you negotiate what a net pricing would be. That's why recently we've switched our pricing on our website around a little bit. It's more of an inquire for pricing kind of thing, so that's shielded a little bit. But we're still very open and honest with all of our interior designers as well as our clients. Our pricing is net pricing. It doesn't matter what that is. And a lot of times too, like I said, the best interior designers will start to will purchase from you, and then they just pass that directly on to the client, or they may even connect you directly with the client. The other thing too is you don't necessarily have to charge sales tax if they have a sales tax certificate. So a sales tax certificate means that they just have a resale tax. So instead of me charging the designer sales tax and then them charging the homeowner sales tax, they just charge the homeowner sales tax, so it's only paid once. You don't need to pay the sales tax twice. So always ask for that sort of certificate before you sell it. The other thing too, and this goes to a question that somebody reached out to me specifically about, is POs. So a PO is a purchase order. So what happens when you work with a designer is often so I'll talk to you about what our process is and how we like to do it, and also what they do as far as like their presentation from what I understand. So they'll reach out to us and say, hey, Paul, we're looking for this table with this size, this finish, blah, 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 blah. I will then usually write up a proposal with the pricing. So it's going to be $5,000 net pricing, blah, 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 blah. And then what they do is they take the proposal and they share it with their client. They include my proposal with their proposal. They usually do a big client meeting where they talk about all of the finishes in the house. And often when they do that proposal, I'll say, hey, if you're doing a proposal to a client, would it be helpful for samples? Would it be helpful we don't do drawings ahead of time, but we're starting to now. So I say, hey, would it be helpful for us to give you shop drawings to be able to show to your client? If you're capable of doing that, go for it. If not, we've done it for a long time without. So what they do is they then present it to the client. If it gets approved by the client, the interior designer would like to move forward. When the interior designer wants to move forward, they often send a PO, which is a purchase order. So a PO is a legally binding document that basically says they owe you X for whatever you're making. So they'll send a PO for a table. We don't necessarily need them because we send our own internal invoices. So you don't necessarily need a PO. You don't need to wait for a PO if you don't want to. But a lot of times an interior designer will send a PO. I think that's how they like to keep organized on their end. So what we do is we just keep the PO on file and then send them our own separate invoice. And we make sure that they follow our specific payment terms still, even with a PO. Where a PO becomes helpful for designers as well as like for us when we're sourcing from other people is like, if we're trying to get materials or something, a PO often signifies that you are going to pay within the time frame that is set. So sometimes a PO is like net 30, meaning it's due in 30 days, or sometimes PO is a net 60, it's due in 60 days. So for us, what they do is they just send an actual just PO, which is just a purchase order with the price on it. And then what I do is like say, hey, thanks for the PO. Here is an invoice to pay the 50% deposit, or the 60% deposit, which is what we do. So once the deposit's paid, they get put into the queue. Then we work on the shop drawings and go back and forth with them in that world. So like I said, with some designers, you really can get hung up in that design phase. They can really sometimes make it challenging, and a lot of that is maybe because they're not great at pitching the idea or selling the idea, or they're working with a really challenging client. We personally at Philadelphia Table Company don't mind working directly with the client. We work with them We work with them often and all the time. And we're actually really good at sort of steering the conversation and focusing it to say, hey, this is actually the best finish for the table. Let's not even explore all these other ones, because really the possibilities start to get endless. But that's sort of like the interior design world in sort of a nutshell. They're really great to work with when you find some really great ones. You're not going to know until you do it, so it's really helpful to just dive in and do it. Networking, I think, is the great way to get in touch with them. There are also a bunch of interior design sort of like internal networks online that you can, or like communities that you can reach out to that you can be a part of, see if you could present for them. But I think a big part of it is growing a social media following, understanding where these interior designers are looking for these pieces, as well as cold outreach. They're not going to know you exist until you actually exist, show them you exist. So reaching out to them, inviting them to your workshop, inviting them to your showroom space, coming by their place, doing what they call a lunch and learn. A lunch and learn is you setting up a presentation. You say, hey, can I come stop by and do a lunch and learn, which means often you're bringing lunch. I don't that often. I just haven't gotten that much success from it, but sometimes I'll bring like donuts and coffee and everything. I just feel like it feels too stuffy and too salesy to do it that way. But whatever special tactic you want to do to get in the door and make sure that they remember you is fantastic. So do whatever, but sort of like the buzzwords of lunch and learn. Can I stop by for a lunch and learn? Which means you provide lunch and you teach them about your company, or you teach them about something like wood or fabric or whatever it is that you're doing. But yeah, if you have any other further questions on this, or if you're an interior designer and you want to spar with me a little bit, I'll gladly welcome you on the podcast. Would love to talk to you back and forth a little bit, get some understanding, a deeper understanding of how your world sort of works. But we've been in business for about 10 years now and have a pretty good understanding of, and worked with a whole gambit of different, everything from celebrity interior designers to the Debbie decorators next door. So we kind of have a pretty good experience, pretty wide range of designers that we've worked with. All right, guys, have a great one. Hope you guys have a productive week this week as we get into this sort of like fall holiday crunch. Those of you guys that are makers, I know our schedules start to get busy. One thing that I like to remind everybody is stay on top of communication with your clients. One thing the clients really care about now is having their table by Thanksgiving or by Christmas or whatever, having the pieces by specific dates. If you're not going to hit the deadline, it's always easier just to say it now before getting to there and saying on Christmas Eve, hey, you're not going to get this on Christmas. It's not going to be under the tree. So get ahead of it now, plan ahead, try to get all the work done that you possibly can. And for those of you guys interested in joining the group, I really hope I see you in there. I've put a link in the show notes below, both on YouTube and all the different podcast things. The link is there. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me, Paul at thehandcraftednetwork.com. All right, guys. Peace.